Your eyes are not cameras. Your brain is not a computer. Your senses lie to you, and it's all by design. Recent work in cognitive science suggests our senses function more like user interfaces than transparent windows. Your brain constructs an experience optimized for survival, not truth. You never see the actual code running underneath. Cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman claims he can prove that space and time don't even exist, and that consciousness might be the only thing that's actually real. In one study, researchers showed bats navigate by echolocation in total darkness, beyond ordinary visual reality, hinting at how diverse perceptual interfaces can be. But here's the terrifying part about lifting this veil. The very theory that explains how we got here proves we can't trust anything we see. Darwin's hidden deception about survival. Darwin's theory of evolution contains a hidden trap that destroys our ability to trust our own senses. The man who gave us natural selection accidentally provided the framework that proves reality as we experience it cannot exist. His process guarantees that any creature seeing the truth about its environment dies off within generations. What Darwin discovered means your eyes, ears, and brain evolved specifically to hide reality from you. Donald Hoffman later used mathematical models to show that natural selection favors perceptual shortcuts over accuracy. Hoffman's simulations extended Darwin's insight. Organisms tuned for truth died off, while those using quick survival shortcuts prevailed. This creates a massive problem for everything we think we know. If our sensory systems evolved to keep us alive rather than inform us accurately, then every single thing we perceive is filtered through survival needs rather than reality. Natural selection works like this. Organisms that survive long enough to reproduce pass on their traits. Organisms that don't survive don't pass on anything. Darwin showed us that survival beats truth every single time. Your ancestors who heard rustling in the bushes and assumed predator lived long enough to become your ancestors. The curious ones who stopped to investigate what was actually making that sound became lunch for something with bigger teeth. The truth seekers died out. The assumption makers lived on. Your brain receives electromagnetic radiation and interprets it as colors that don't actually exist in the physics of light waves. Your ears take air pressure changes and create the experience of music. Your nervous system translates molecular interactions into tastes and smells. None of these experiences match what's actually happening in the physical world. In Australia, male jewel beetles mistake brown beer bottles for mates, an evolutionary shortcut that survives, while precise truth seekers vanish. These beetles know as much about their actual mates as we know about reality. The organisms using shortcuts and quick assumptions dominated because they made faster decisions with less energy expenditure. While the truth seekers were still processing accurate information about their environment, the shortcut users had already grabbed resources and moved on to reproduce. Evolution rewards speed and efficiency, not accuracy and truth. This means 4 billion years of evolution has programmed your brain to deceive you about everything. Your brain filters out 99.9% of available sensory information before it reaches your conscious awareness. Every second, your nervous system receives approximately 11 million bits of sensory data. Your conscious mind processes about 40 bits. That means you're aware of 0.0004% of what's actually happening around you. The rest gets discarded, modified, or completely fabricated by your brain's prediction systems. Think about what this means for your daily life. You walk around convinced you're seeing the world around you, but you're actually experiencing a highly edited summary created by neural networks that evolved to keep primitive humans alive in dangerous environments. Your brain throws away massive amounts of information, fills in gaps with educated guesses, and presents you with a simplified cartoon version of reality that feels completely real. The filtering process happens automatically and unconsciously. You can't turn it off or adjust the settings. You're stuck with biological blinders that were optimized for survival scenarios your ancestors faced thousands of years ago. Your visual system prioritizes detecting movement and identifying potential threats over accurately representing the quantum field fluctuations that physicists tell us actually constitute matter. Your auditory system focuses on human voices and sudden loud sounds rather than the full spectrum of vibrations moving through the air around you. This biological editing system worked perfectly when humans lived in small groups and worried about predators, food scarcity, and finding mates. But now you live in a complex technological society while still using the same perceptual shortcuts that helped cave dwellers survive. Your brain interprets social media notifications with the same urgency it once reserved for approaching tigers. It processes traffic noise as potential threats. It creates stress responses to emails that your nervous system treats like life or death emergencies. The mathematical proof gets worse when you consider reproductive success. Organisms that spent time and energy accurately perceiving their environment had less time and energy available for finding mates and raising offspring. The ones who used mental shortcuts could devote more resources to reproduction. Over millions of generations, this created a massive selection pressure against truth-seeking and toward efficient approximation. Your ancestors were the ones who made quick decisions based on incomplete information, rather than the ones who wanted to understand what was really happening. Darwin's theory predicts that if natural selection shaped our perceptual systems, then those systems must be unreliable narrators of objective reality. Every sense you trust evolved to help primitive humans make fast survival decisions, not to provide accurate information about the fundamental nature of existence. Your eyes don't show you electromagnetic radiation. They show you a user interface designed to help you navigate the world efficiently enough to survive and reproduce. This applies to your sense of time, space, causation, and even your own identity. The experience of being a separate self moving through a world of objects exists because this perceptual framework helped your ancestors stay alive. It doesn't mean this framework corresponds to what's actually happening at the deepest levels of reality. Darwin showed us that evolution optimizes for reproductive fitness, not for truth-telling ability. The implications hit every aspect of human knowledge. Science, philosophy, and common sense all assume our perceptions provide at least somewhat accurate information about the external world. But if Darwin was right about how evolution works, then this assumption becomes questionable. 4 billion years of natural selection has produced sensory systems that prioritize survival over accuracy because seeing reality accurately would slow us down in survival situations. But the mathematical certainty of this deception needed proof. Someone had to test whether truth-seeking organisms really would lose to shortcut users in head-to-head competition. The answer would require running the evolutionary process thousands of times under controlled conditions to see which strategy actually wins. The mathematical proof that reality is fake. Hoffman designed computer simulations that sent shockwaves through research labs worldwide. In Hoffman's simplified computer models, truth-seeking agents always lost, highlighting how efficiency trumps accuracy in evolution. Simplified virtual worlds pitted truth-seekers against shortcut users, and each time, the shortcut users dominated. The results shocked everyone involved in the research. The truth-seeing organisms didn't just lose, they went extinct, every single time. In simulation after simulation, the organisms with perfect perception failed to survive while the shortcut users thrived and reproduced successfully. The mathematical certainty reached 100% across thousands of trials in these artificial environments. Why did accurate perception prove evolutionarily suicidal? They spent too long analyzing. Meanwhile, shortcut users acted quickly and reproduced. Truth seekers died out. The detailed analysis paralyzed the truth seekers. They had better information but couldn't act fast enough to benefit from it. Energy consumption played a crucial role in these outcomes. Processing complete sensory information requires massive computational resources. The brain tissue needed to analyze reality accurately consumes enormous amounts of glucose and oxygen. In survival situations, organisms with limited energy budgets can't afford the luxury of comprehensive analysis. They need quick decisions that conserve resources for other essential activities like finding food and reproducing. The jewel beetle provides a perfect real-world example of how evolution prioritizes efficiency over accuracy. Male jewel beetles in the Australian outback attempt to mate with brown beer bottles scattered across the landscape. The beetles mistake these bottles for female mates because their perception system only registers 3 key features: dimpled, glossy, and brown. These 3 characteristics were sufficient to identify females successfully for millions of years. The beetles don't need to understand bottle manufacturing, glass composition, or human littering habits. They don't need to know what beer is or why humans drink it. Their perception system evolved to detect specific visual cues that correlated with reproductive opportunities. The system worked perfectly until humans introduced objects that happened to trigger the same perceptual shortcuts. These beetles know as much about their actual mates as humans know about actual reality. The male beetle approaching a beer bottle experiences genuine attraction and mating behavior. From his perspective, he's found an unusually large and attractive female. The illusion feels completely real because his nervous system wasn't designed to distinguish between real females and objects that match the same visual pattern. Current 2025 research on cognitive load confirms why shortcuts beat detailed analysis in survival scenarios. Neuroscientists using advanced brain imaging can now measure the exact energy costs of different perceptual processes. Accurate perception demands roughly 40 times more neural resources than approximation-based shortcuts. This creates an enormous evolutionary pressure against truth-seeking behavior. The human brain consumes about 20% of your body's total energy budget despite representing only 2% of your body weight. If your ancestors had evolved more accurate perceptual systems, their brains would have required even more energy to operate. This would have left less energy available for other survival activities like running from predators, fighting off competitors, or attracting mates. Shortcuts and heuristics allow organisms to make acceptable decisions with minimal energy expenditure. Your brain evolved thousands of these cognitive shortcuts that help you navigate complex environments without overwhelming your information processing capabilities. You recognize faces using simple pattern matching rather than detailed geometric analysis. You assess social situations based on quick emotional reads rather than comprehensive behavioral analysis. These mental shortcuts create systematic errors in perception and judgment, but they keep you alive and functioning in fast-paced environments. A gazelle that stops to analyze whether an approaching shape is definitely a lion or possibly just a shadow gets eaten by actual lions. A gazelle that runs first and analyzes later survives to reproduce and pass on paranoid tendencies to future generations. Mathematical proof extends beyond individual survival to reproductive success. Organisms that spent cognitive resources on accurate perception had few resources available for courtship displays, territorial defense, and offspring care. The ones using perceptual shortcuts could devote more energy to activities that directly increased their reproductive fitness. Over thousands of generations, this created overwhelming selection pressure against truth-seeking and toward efficient approximation. Modern environments present the same trade-offs that shaped your ancestors. You make hundreds of quick decisions every day based on incomplete information and educated guesses. You choose foods based on appearance and smell rather than detailed nutritional analysis. You assess potential romantic partners using rapid judgments about attractiveness and compatibility rather than comprehensive personality inventories. You navigate traffic by estimating speeds and distances rather than calculating precise trajectories. These shortcuts work well enough to keep you alive and functioning in complex social environments. Perfect accuracy would slow you down to the point where you couldn't compete effectively with other humans who make faster decisions based on approximations. The job market rewards people who can make quick strategic choices, not those who spend months researching every possible outcome. Hoffman's simulations prove that evolution designed your perceptual systems to be effective rather than accurate. Your eyes, ears, and brain evolved to provide just enough information to guide adaptive behavior without overwhelming you with unnecessary details. The mathematical certainty shows that any organism optimized for truth-telling rather than survival efficiency goes extinct when competing against organisms optimized for speed and energy conservation. The implications are disturbing and liberating simultaneously. You walk around convinced that your perceptions show you reality, but they actually show you a carefully edited summary designed to help you survive and reproduce. The editing process happens automatically and unconsciously. You can't turn it off or adjust the settings. You're stuck with biological systems that prioritize useful fiction over inconvenient truth, and the mathematics prove this arrangement was inevitable given how evolution actually works. But this raises an uncomfortable question about the very organ you trust most to navigate the world around you. Your brain is not a camera, it's a liar. Most people think their eyes work like cameras. Point them at something, and they capture an accurate picture of what's there. This assumption forms the foundation of how we understand knowledge, science, and reality itself. But 2025 neuroscience research reveals something disturbing about this basic belief. Your brain doesn't record reality, it manufactures it. Every single thing you see gets constructed inside your head using internal prediction systems that have nothing to do with what's actually happening outside your skull. Your brain operates as a prediction machine rather than a recording device. It constantly generates expectations about what should be happening in your environment, then compares those predictions with incoming sensory signals. When the predictions match the signals, you experience smooth, coherent perception. When they don't match, your brain updates its internal models and adjusts future predictions. This process happens thousands of times per second without your conscious awareness. The construction process becomes obvious when you examine how your brain handles missing information. Each eye has a blind spot where the optic nerve connects to the retina. Your brain fills it in seamlessly, proof of how it manufactures reality. This creates a gap in your visual field roughly the size of 6 full moons held at arm's length. You never notice this massive hole in your vision, because your brain fills it in automatically using information from surrounding areas and predictions based on past experience. Your brain performs similar construction work with colors. The electromagnetic radiation hitting your eyes contains no colors whatsoever. Color exists only as an internal experience created by your nervous system. Different wavelengths of light trigger different responses in specialized cells, but your brain interprets these responses and generates the experience of red, blue, or green. The color red that you see when looking at a stop sign exists nowhere in the physics of light waves bouncing off painted metal. Optical illusions demonstrate your brain's creative storytelling in action. The famous dress that went viral online appeared either blue and black or white and gold to different viewers. The actual dress was blue and black, but lighting conditions in the photograph created ambiguous visual information. Some brains predicted indoor lighting and saw white and gold. Other brains predicted outdoor lighting and saw blue and black. The illusion revealed that color perception depends more on your brain's predictions than on the actual light reaching your eyes. Different species construct completely different realities from identical environments. Bees see ultraviolet patterns on flowers that remain invisible to human eyes. These patterns guide bees to nectar sources, but they don't exist in human visual experience. Snakes detect infrared radiation as heat signatures that help them locate warm-blooded prey. Sharks sense electrical fields generated by muscle contractions in other fish. Each species constructs a custom reality based on its specific sensory equipment and survival needs. The confidence you feel in your sensory equipment becomes humorous when you consider how unreliable it actually is. Your eyes can only focus clearly on objects in a tiny central area of your visual field. Everything in your peripheral vision appears blurry, but your brain creates the illusion that you see the entire scene in sharp focus. This happens because your eyes constantly move around, scanning different parts of your environment and building up a composite image that feels like comprehensive clarity. Your brain also invents continuity where none exists. When you blink, your visual input disappears completely for roughly 300 milliseconds. During an average day, you spend about 40 minutes with your eyes closed due to blinking. Your brain edits out these gaps and creates the experience of uninterrupted vision. You never notice the blackouts because your neural systems predict what should be happening during blinks and fill in the missing information seamlessly. Recent advances in brain imaging technology allow researchers to watch this construction process in real time. 2025 studies using high-resolution scanners show that most brain activity during perception happens in areas that generate predictions rather than areas that process incoming sensory data. Your visual cortex spends more energy creating internal models of what you should be seeing than analyzing the actual light patterns hitting your retinas. This prediction-based processing follows mathematical principles discovered in artificial intelligence research. Your brain uses Bayesian inference to combine prior expectations with current sensory evidence. When you hear footsteps behind you at night, your brain doesn't just process the sound waves. It combines those sounds with predictions based on your current location, time of day, recent experiences, and stored memories about similar situations. The result is a constructed experience that includes not just hearing, but also emotional responses, spatial awareness, and behavioral preparations. Temperature perception reveals another layer of neural construction. When you touch something, you don't directly sense its temperature. Your nervous system detects the rate of heat transfer between your skin and the object. Metal feels colder than wood at room temperature because metal conducts heat away from your skin faster, not because metal is actually at a lower temperature. Your brain constructs the experience of hot and cold based on heat transfer rates rather than absolute temperatures. The implications become unsettling when you realize that your most trusted sense operates as an unreliable narrator. Everything you use to navigate the world, make decisions, and understand your environment gets filtered through prediction systems that evolved to help primitive humans survive rather than perceive accurately. Your brain prioritizes creating useful experiences over creating accurate ones. This construction process operates below the level of conscious control. You can't turn off your brain's predictive systems or access the raw sensory data before it gets processed and interpreted. You're permanently trapped inside a constructed reality created by neural networks that evolved to keep your ancestors alive long enough to reproduce. The construction feels absolutely real because you have no access to anything else for comparison. Your brain actively constructs a custom reality designed specifically for your survival needs and shaped by your individual experience. This construction happens automatically, continuously, and without your awareness or consent. You experience this manufactured reality as obviously true because you have no alternative reference point, but the manufacturing process remains hidden behind layers of neural processing that evolved to deceive you about their own operation. But if your brain manufactures the reality you experience, what about the fundamental building blocks that reality seems to rest on? The solid ground beneath your feet, the passage of time, the three-dimensional space around you. Surely these basic features of existence must be real. Space and time don't actually exist. Leading physicists now argue spacetime disappears at the Planck scale. Below 1033 centimeters, equations break down. This isn't philosophical speculation or theoretical mumbling. Studies combining general relativity with quantum theory predict these breakdowns, revealing that spacetime functions more like a computer desktop than fundamental reality. Einstein's theories combined with quantum mechanics create mathematical contradictions that can only be resolved by accepting that space and time are constructed interfaces, hiding something far more strange underneath. The breakdown happens at the Planck length, which measures approximately 1033 centimeters. At this scale, smaller than anything you can imagine, the mathematical equations that describe spacetime stop making sense. The numbers become infinite or undefined. The mathematical structure collapses. This isn't a limitation of current knowledge or measurement technology. The math itself proves that spacetime cannot extend infinitely in all directions as a fundamental aspect of reality. Space and time may act like your computer's desktop, an interface hiding the true hardware beneath. You see files and folders arranged in space. You can move them around, organize them, delete them. The desktop interface feels real and functional, but the files and folders aren't actually sitting inside your computer as physical objects arranged in spatial relationships. They're representations created by software to help you interact with underlying code. The actual computer operations happen at a deeper level, involving electrical patterns and binary processing that bears no resemblance to the desktop metaphor your brain finds useful. Spacetime works the same way. The three dimensions of space and the flow of time that you experience represent interface elements designed to help you navigate reality efficiently. But the actual structure of existence operates according to completely different principles that have nothing to do with spatial relationships or temporal sequences. You're interacting with a user interface that translates incomprehensible deeper processes into familiar spatial and temporal patterns your brain can work with. Recent 2025 advances in quantum gravity research support this interface theory with increasingly precise mathematical proofs. Multiple independent research teams have demonstrated that spacetime emerges from more fundamental non-spatial and non-temporal processes. The mathematics describing these deeper levels uses entirely different concepts that don't translate into spatial or temporal language. Reality at its foundation operates according to principles that your brain cannot directly comprehend, so evolution provided you with a simplified interface instead. The implications attack everything you consider obviously true about physical reality. The table you're sitting at seems solid and permanent. It occupies a specific location in space and persists through time. But the mathematical structure of reality suggests that this table exists only as an interface element designed to help you navigate your environment. The actual processes creating your experience of table operate at levels of reality that bear no relationship to solid objects persisting through time. The hardest thing to accept is that this solid, substantial world around you isn't actually there in the way you experience it. That table feels genuinely hard when you touch it. It resists your attempts to push through it. It occupies space and prevents other objects from occupying the same location. These properties feel absolutely real because your interface was designed to create convincing experiences of solidity, resistance, and spatial exclusion. But mathematical analysis reveals that these experiences get generated by processes that don't involve actual solid objects arranged in actual space. This connects directly to Hoffman's virtual reality headset metaphor. You were born wearing a perceptual headset that creates the experience of living in a world of objects moving through space and time. The headset feels completely transparent because you have no access to reality without it. You can't remove the headset or even detect that you're wearing one. The interface creates such convincing experiences that you assume the interface represents actual reality rather than a translation system. Current physics research suggests that consciousness might be the fundamental reality that generates spacetime as an interface for conscious agents to interact. This flips traditional materialism completely upside down. Instead of consciousness emerging from complex arrangements of matter in space and time, consciousness creates the illusion of matter arranged in spacetime. You might be the consciousness experiencing itself through a carefully constructed interface designed to create the experience of being a physical body in a physical world. The mathematical proofs create disturbing questions about what actually exists beyond the spacetime interface. If space and time are constructed experiences rather than fundamental aspects of reality, then what provides the foundation for existence itself? The answer involves mathematical structures that don't translate into human language or spatial metaphors. Reality at its deepest levels operates according to principles that remain completely alien to any concepts your brain evolved to understand. These discoveries open up technological possibilities that sound like science fiction, but follow naturally from the mathematics. If spacetime is an interface rather than fundamental reality, then it might be possible to edit the interface directly rather than working within its limitations. This could enable instant travel, time manipulation, and reality modification that bypass the apparent constraints of physical law. The constraints exist only within the interface, not in the deeper reality that generates the interface. The psychological impact of accepting spacetime as illusion creates profound shifts in how you understand your daily experience. Every location you visit, every moment you experience, every physical interaction you have gets revealed as interface elements rather than actual reality. You never go anywhere because space doesn't exist. You never experience time passing because time is a constructed experience. You never touch physical objects because objects and touching are interface metaphors for processes that operate according to completely different principles. This perspective transforms your relationship with physical limitations and possibilities. If you're operating within a constructed interface rather than fundamental reality, then the interface rules might be more flexible than they appear. The apparent solidity of matter, the apparent separation between objects, and the apparent flow of time from past to future might represent malleable interface properties rather than absolute constraints on what's possible. Everything you consider real functions as a user interface for something that operates according to principles your brain cannot directly comprehend. The interface creates convincing experiences of space, time, matter, and physical interaction. But these experiences represent translations of deeper processes rather than accurate descriptions of what actually exists. But there's a terrifying reason why your brain maintains these elaborate deceptions rather than showing you what's really happening. Why seeing true reality would kill you. Evolution equipped you with perceptual filters because unfiltered reality would destroy your mind instantly. Your brain processes roughly 40 bits of information per second from the 11 million bits of sensory data flooding your nervous system every moment. Remove those filters, and your consciousness would collapse under computational loads that exceed your neural capacity by millions of times over. The filtering happens automatically through layers of neural processing that compress massive data streams into manageable chunks. Your retina contains 120 million light-detecting cells, but your optic nerve carries only 1 million fibers to your brain. The first compression happens right in your eye, discarding enormous amounts of visual information before it reaches higher processing centers. Additional filtering occurs at every stage, with each layer throwing away data deemed irrelevant for survival. People with synesthesia demonstrate what happens when these filters partially break down. Their brains create automatic connections between different sensory systems, causing sounds to trigger colors or numbers to generate tastes. While synesthesia can create beautiful experiences, it also creates serious challenges. Many synesthetes report feeling overwhelmed in grocery stores, where fluorescent lighting triggers cascades of visual patterns, background music creates streams of colors, and conversations generate physical sensations. Even this minor reduction in filtering requires significant recovery time after exposure to environments most people find manageable. Sensory processing disorders reveal more severe consequences when filtering systems malfunction. Individuals with these conditions cannot screen out irrelevant environmental information. Fluorescent lights become unbearably loud. Clothing textures feel painfully rough. Background conversations sound as loud as someone speaking directly into their ears. These disorders create anxiety, concentration difficulties, and physical discomfort that make normal activities nearly impossible. Their struggles demonstrate how dependent we are on systems that actively hide most of reality from conscious awareness. The absurdity becomes obvious when you consider how poorly you handle the microscopic fraction of reality you do perceive. You spend 20 minutes choosing what to watch on Netflix because 12 options overwhelm your decision-making capabilities. You feel stressed when your phone receives too many notifications. You become mentally exhausted after a few hours in busy environments with lots of sights, sounds, and social interactions. These everyday experiences of information overload happen while your brain filters out over 99% of available environmental data. Current 2025 research on cognitive load reveals that human information processing systems operate dangerously close to maximum capacity, even with extensive filtering. Brain imaging studies show that detailed visual processing alone consumes 20% of your body's total energy budget. Without filtering systems, your brain would require more glucose and oxygen than your cardiovascular system could deliver. The metabolic demands would exceed your biological capabilities within seconds. Augmented reality experiments show users overshoot reaching tasks in VR, but undershoot in AR, revealing how even minor changes to perceptual interfaces create immediate performance problems. These studies demonstrate the fragility of your information processing capabilities under normal circumstances. Small increases in sensory input or cognitive demands create measurable decreases in performance and increases in stress responses. Your nervous system operates with very little spare capacity for handling additional information loads. The mathematical complexity underlying ordinary matter contains more information than your brain could process in billions of years. Quantum field fluctuations, electromagnetic spectrum data beyond visible light, and millions of molecular interactions happening every second would require computational resources that exceed your entire nervous system's capacity by factors of millions. Processing complete environmental information would be like trying to download the entire internet through a dial-up connection. Your cognitive systems would freeze, crash, and become completely non-functional. Research on students learning with background music versus quiet environments shows how even minor information increases dramatically impaired performance. Workers receiving frequent interruptions make more mistakes and require longer completion times for basic tasks. These studies reveal that your brain already operates at near maximum capacity, processing the filtered information that reaches conscious awareness. Organisms that evolved more comprehensive perceptual systems faced impossible energy budgets. They couldn't gather enough food to power energy-hungry brains while maintaining their bodies and competing for reproductive opportunities. Natural selection favored creatures making fast decisions based on limited information, rather than creatures trying to process complete environmental data before acting. Your ancestors survived because they used shortcuts and approximations that conserved cognitive resources for other essential activities. Your ignorance about reality's true nature literally keeps you alive and functional. Evolution designed perceptual systems to hide overwhelming complexity because organisms attempting accurate perception couldn't survive competitive environments. Your filtered, simplified, constructed version of reality provides just enough information to guide adaptive behavior without overwhelming limited cognitive resources. The filtering systems protecting you from information overload operate automatically and unconsciously. You cannot turn them off, adjust their settings, or access raw sensory data before processing and interpretation. You remain permanently trapped inside constructed experiences created by neural networks evolved to deceive you about their own operation. The deception feels absolutely real because you have no alternative reference point for comparison. But this raises a profound question about what lies beyond these elaborate filtering systems. If your brain constructs everything you experience to protect you from overwhelming reality, what actually exists underneath all these carefully maintained illusions? The answer challenges everything you think you know about the relationship between mind and matter. The consciousness code behind everything. Some theorists like Kant or modern thinkers such as Hoffman propose consciousness-first models, but the debate is unresolved. Hoffman claims that consciousness isn't something that emerges from complex arrangements of matter in your brain. Instead, consciousness is the fundamental reality that creates the illusion of matter, space, time, and everything else you experience. He's developing mathematical models that start with consciousness as the basic building block of reality and derive the physical world from there. Traditional materialism assumes that matter comes first, and consciousness somehow emerges from sufficiently complex material processes. Scientists spend enormous resources trying to figure out how dead matter somehow becomes alive and aware. They study brain tissue, measure neural activity, and map connections between different brain regions, hoping to discover where consciousness comes from and how it works. But after decades of intensive research, the fundamental mystery remains completely unsolved. 2025 research landscape reveals that the hard problem of consciousness has actually gotten harder rather than easier to solve. Advanced brain imaging technology can measure neural activity with incredible precision. Researchers can track individual neurons firing in real time. They can map the exact pathways that information takes as it moves through different brain regions. But none of this explains why there's any subjective experience at all associated with these physical processes. You can study every aspect of brain function without ever encountering the actual experience of consciousness. The taste of chocolate, the feeling of sadness, the visual experience of seeing red, these subjective qualities don't appear anywhere in the objective measurements of brain activity. Scientists can measure correlations between brain states and reported experiences, but correlation doesn't explain why physical processes should create inner experience in the first place. Hoffman suggests that researchers have been approaching this problem backwards. Instead of trying to figure out how matter creates consciousness, maybe consciousness creates matter. What if you're programmer and player in a virtual world? That's the idea in some new theories. From inside the game, everything feels real and substantial. You interact with objects, navigate environments, and engage with other characters. The game world has consistent rules and predictable behaviors that make perfect sense from your perspective as someone living inside the simulation. But the programmer who wrote the code knows that the characters, objects, and environments don't actually exist as the game portrays them. They're representations created by underlying computational processes that bear no resemblance to the game world that players experience. The programmer can modify the code and create what would appear as miracles from inside the game: instant travel, object transformation, reality manipulation that seems impossible according to the game's apparent rules. Ancient spiritual traditions have been saying essentially the same thing for thousands of years. They describe reality as consciousness experiencing itself through countless different perspectives and forms. They claim that individual identity is an illusion created by consciousness focusing its attention through particular viewpoints. Modern physics is beginning to converge on similar conclusions through completely different methods and mathematical approaches. The humor in our scientific approach becomes obvious when you consider how we've been searching for consciousness. We've been looking for awareness inside brain tissue, like trying to find the internet inside your computer. You can take apart every component of your computer, examine every circuit and processor, but you'll never find the internet hiding in the hardware. The internet exists as patterns of information flowing through networks that extend far beyond any individual device. Consciousness might work similarly. Instead of being produced by your brain, consciousness might be the fundamental network that your brain connects to and receives information from. Your brain functions more like a radio receiver tuning into consciousness signals rather than a generator creating consciousness from scratch. This explains why damaging the brain affects conscious experience. You're damaging the receiving equipment, not the signal itself. Hoffman's mathematical models of conscious agents provide frameworks for understanding how this might work in practice. He starts with the assumption that consciousness is fundamental, and then derives the structure of spacetime mathematically from interactions between conscious agents. These models suggest that space, time, and physical objects emerge from more basic conscious processes rather than consciousness emerging from physical processes. The mathematics work remarkably well for describing observed phenomena in physics. Hoffman claims he can derive the structure of spacetime that Einstein described in his theories of relativity by starting with conscious agents as the fundamental reality. This approach offers potential solutions to problems that have puzzled physicists for decades, including how to unify quantum mechanics with general relativity. What does this mean for your daily experience of being human? If consciousness is fundamental and you are consciousness experiencing itself through a human perspective, then your true nature extends far beyond the limitations of your physical body and personal history. The anxieties, inadequacies, and competitive struggles that dominate human experience exist only within the constructed reality you're experiencing, not at the level of your fundamental nature. Your sense of being a separate individual competing against other individuals for limited resources represents a perspective created by consciousness to generate particular types of experiences. But this perspective isn't your actual identity any more than a character in a video game is the actual identity of the person playing the game. The player exists independently of any particular character and can choose to play different characters or stop playing entirely. Meditation research shows changes in self-referential brain regions, hinting that the sense of a unified self can dissolve. Some 2025 studies explore whether consciousness functions more like a fundamental force of nature that extends throughout the universe rather than a local phenomenon produced by biological processes. These findings suggest that recognizing your true nature beyond the human character you're currently playing might unlock capabilities and experiences that transcend normal human limitations. The practical question becomes how to access your true nature beyond the human perspective. If you are infinite consciousness experiencing itself through a temporary human viewpoint, then you might discover that you have nothing to prove and no one to compete against, because you are the consciousness creating all the characters in this reality. You might be the infinite consciousness experiencing itself through countless different perspectives simultaneously, with your human life representing just one small facet of an inconceivably vast and creative awareness. But these theories about consciousness creating reality might sound abstract until you see them playing out in the technology we're building right now. How AI and VR prove we're already in a simulation. Artificial intelligence and virtual reality show how easy it is to create convincing illusions, paralleling our built-in perceptual illusions. The AI revolution happening right now demonstrates exactly what Hoffman predicted about perception and reality. Large language models generate responses that feel completely natural and intelligent through predictive processing, yet these systems don't actually understand anything they're saying. They create the appearance of comprehension and consciousness without any actual awareness behind the words, using the same prediction-based methods your brain uses to construct your daily experience. These AI systems work by predicting what words should come next in a sequence based on patterns learned from massive datasets. They don't think, feel, or understand meaning the way humans assume they do. Yet they generate text that convincingly mimics human thought processes, emotional responses, and creative insights. The systems create elaborate illusions of intelligence without any actual intelligence operating behind the scenes, just like your brain creates elaborate illusions of solid objects and continuous experiences without any actual solidity or continuity existing in the underlying physics. The parallel between AI-generated content and human perception becomes disturbing when you examine how both systems prioritize convincing appearances over accurate representations. Your brain generates the experience of seeing colors, hearing sounds, and feeling textures without those experiences corresponding to what actually exists in the external world. Similarly, AI systems generate responses that feel meaningful and true without those responses corresponding to actual understanding or knowledge. Both your brain and current AI systems use prediction-based processing to create convincing experiences from limited input data. Your visual system predicts what you should be seeing based on tiny fragments of light hitting your retinas, then fills in the gaps with educated guesses. AI language models predict what words should come next based on statistical patterns in their training data, then generate responses that feel coherent and intelligent even though no actual reasoning happened. Virtual reality technology has reached the point where it can fool your senses completely in controlled environments. Extended VR experiences create visual, auditory, and haptic sensations that feel absolutely real while you're immersed in them, demonstrating how easily your perceptual systems can be hijacked by artificial inputs. Users report genuine emotional responses to virtual scenarios, physical sensations from simulated touches, and spatial awareness in environments that exist only as computer code. The technology demonstrates the same interface principles that evolution built into your biological systems. Brain-computer interfaces are advancing to the point where researchers can directly stimulate neural pathways to create specific sensory experiences. These systems bypass your normal sensory organs entirely and generate the experience of seeing, hearing, or feeling things by activating the appropriate brain regions with electrical signals. The experiences created through direct neural stimulation feel identical to experiences generated through normal sensory pathways. This reveals something profound about the nature of all your experiences. Whether sensory information comes from external sources or gets generated artificially makes no difference to your conscious experience. Your brain creates the same types of experiences, regardless of whether the inputs come from actual objects in your environment or from computer systems designed to trigger specific neural responses. AI researchers are discovering the same efficiency versus accuracy trade-offs that shaped biological evolution. Machine learning systems trained to optimize for speed and resource conservation consistently outperform systems designed for comprehensive analysis. The most successful AI applications use shortcuts, approximations, and heuristic approaches rather than detailed logical reasoning. This mirrors exactly how natural selection favored organisms that made fast decisions based on limited information over organisms that tried to analyze situations completely. The humor in our situation becomes obvious when you realize we're building machines that lie to us as effectively as our own brains do. We create AI systems that generate convincing but inaccurate information, then feel surprised when these systems don't correspond to objective truth. We design virtual reality environments that fool our senses, then marvel at how realistic the illusions feel. We're essentially building external versions of the same deceptive systems that evolution installed in our heads millions of years ago. Current AI development focuses heavily on creating systems that can generate believable experiences rather than systems that provide accurate information. The most successful chatbots are those that can maintain convincing conversations, not those that give the most factual responses. The most popular social media algorithms are those that create engaging user experiences, not those that show users accurate representations of reality. We are optimizing our technology for the same goals that evolution optimized our biology for, creating compelling illusions rather than revealing truth. Augmented reality experiments show users overshoot reaching tasks in VR, but undershoot in AR, revealing how different interface modifications create immediate changes in behavior and perception. These studies demonstrate that your brain adapts quickly to new perceptual interfaces, treating artificial inputs as real environmental information. The research shows that users cannot reliably distinguish between real and simulated experiences in many contexts when the simulations are designed properly. Virtual reality environments now incorporate AI-generated speech that can convey emotional cues like happiness or sadness with remarkable effectiveness. Users report strong emotional reactions to virtual characters that display these artificially generated emotional signals. The technology creates genuine feelings of empathy and connection toward entities that exist only as computer programs. This demonstrates how your emotional responses operate independently of whether their triggers correspond to actual conscious beings or sophisticated simulations. These technological developments reveal how malleable your perception actually is. Your brain constructs experiences based on incoming information without any reliable method for determining whether that information originates from actual external sources or artificial generation systems. The same neural pathways that process real sensory data also process simulated inputs, creating identical conscious experiences regardless of their origin. The implications become unsettling when you consider how much of your daily experience might already involve artificially generated elements. Social media feeds use algorithms to curate information that feels personally relevant but doesn't correspond to actual reality. News sources use AI systems to generate content that feels authoritative but may contain fabricated details. Online interactions increasingly involve chatbots and automated systems designed to mimic human communication patterns. You're living in an environment where the boundary between authentic and artificial experience has become increasingly blurred. The technology demonstrates that your perceptual systems cannot distinguish between genuine and simulated inputs when those simulations are designed properly. This suggests that much of what you consider real experience might already be artificially constructed without your awareness. Our technology is accidentally demonstrating that we've been living in a simulation created by our own brains all along. The artificial simulations we're building simply create additional layers of illusion on top of the biological illusions that evolution already installed in our perceptual systems. But this raises a disturbing question about the foundation of everything you consider yourself to be. The identity crisis: who are you really? Every aspect of your identity gets constructed by the same neural processes that create your experience of the external world. What remains when you strip away every single perception your brain has ever created? If your eyes don't show you reality, your brain constructs everything you experience, and even space and time are illusions, then what exactly are you? This question hits at the core of human existence, because your entire sense of self gets built from the same illusions that create your experience of solid objects moving through space and time. Your sense of identity relies completely on stories your brain tells about who you are. You think you're a person with a particular name, age, profession, and life history. You identify with your thoughts, emotions, memories, and physical appearance. But every single element of this identity gets constructed by the same neural processes that create the illusion of living in a world of objects. Your brain creates the experience of being a separate self, just like it creates the experience of seeing colors that don't actually exist in light waves. According to cognitive scientist Donald Hoffman, our sense of self is not a fixed entity, but a construct of the brain, built upon interpretations and narratives. This challenges the traditional view of a stable self, suggesting that the I we perceive is a product of cognitive processes rather than an inherent essence. Recent studies on self-perception reveal something disturbing about identity formation. Researchers using advanced brain imaging can watch in real time as different neural networks construct various aspects of personal identity. The brain regions that generate your sense of being a continuous self through time operate using the same prediction-based processing that creates all your other perceptual experiences. The narrative of personal identity requires constant maintenance and updating. Your brain works continuously to create the feeling that you're the same person who had experiences yesterday and will have experiences tomorrow. This sense of continuity gets manufactured by neural systems that edit your memories, fill in gaps in your personal history, and create connections between different experiences to maintain a coherent story about who you are. Competition and comparison become completely meaningless when you realize that you're creating everything you're competing against. Hoffman suggests that the need to compete with others diminishes when we understand that we are, in a sense, the creators of our own reality. Your brain constructs the experience of other people, just like it constructs everything else in your perceptual world. The person you're trying to impress, the rival you're worried about surpassing, the social group you want to fit into, all of these exist as constructions in your own consciousness rather than as independent entities separate from yourself. This creates a profound shift in how you understand social dynamics and personal struggles. The colleague who seems more successful, the friend who appears more attractive, the family member who gets more attention, these people exist in your experience as characters in a story your consciousness is telling itself. You're essentially competing against other characters in a game you invented, then forgetting that you invented the game and taking the competition seriously. Your ego spends enormous energy fighting for status and recognition in social hierarchies that exist only in constructed realities. You worry about what other people think of your appearance, accomplishments, and choices. You feel inadequate when comparing yourself to others who seem more successful or attractive. But these social dynamics operate like competitive gaming, where you're simultaneously playing all the characters and judging the competition. The shift in perspective transforms how you approach personal relationships and emotional struggles. Arguments with family members become interactions between different aspects of the same consciousness. Romantic relationships become consciousness exploring itself through experiences of connection and separation. Professional conflicts become scenarios consciousness creates to generate particular types of challenges and growth opportunities. Recognition of your true nature beyond the personal identity avatar creates profound liberation from these psychological struggles. When you understand that you are the consciousness creating this entire experience, rather than just the character living within it, the need to prove yourself or compete against others disappears. This perspective challenges ego-driven behaviors that often lead to conflict and suffering, suggesting that a shift in perspective can lead to a more compassionate and less competitive view of the world. Neuroscience research on meditation shows measurable changes in brain regions associated with self-referential processing and personal identity construction. Studies reveal that meditation reduces default mode network activity, allowing glimpses beyond ego construction. Long-term practitioners develop decreased activity in areas that generate the sense of being a separate self. They report increased feelings of connection, reduced anxiety about personal inadequacy, and decreased competitive drives. Meditation offers a path to experience our true nature by dropping all descriptions and concepts, allowing individuals to transcend the limitations of ordinary perception. This practice involves letting go of the stories and labels we give ourselves, such as professional titles or social roles, and recognizing that these are merely constructs. This process can lead to a sense of liberation from the constraints of the ego and a deeper understanding of one's true self. The practical implications transform how you navigate daily life. Relationships become opportunities for consciousness to explore itself through different perspectives rather than competitions between separate individuals. Professional challenges become interesting puzzles consciousness creates for itself rather than threats to your personal security or status. Personal struggles like anxiety, depression, and inadequacy lose their grip when you recognize them as temporary experiences arising within consciousness rather than fundamental aspects of who you are. The awareness observing these difficult experiences remains peaceful and unchanged regardless of what thoughts or emotions appear within it. The recognition of the illusionary nature of our perceived reality is the first step toward transcending it. By understanding that our experiences are carefully crafted illusions designed to keep us alive, we can begin to move beyond these limitations. This perspective empowers individuals to question their assumptions about reality and discover their true nature beyond the constraints of their current perceptions. But recognizing these illusions intellectually is just the beginning. The real transformation happens when you begin to experience your true nature directly through practices that reveal how your brain constructs reality moment by moment. Breaking free from the reality prison. The most direct path to seeing beyond these constructed limitations starts with meditation and mindfulness practices that reveal how your brain builds reality moment by moment. When you sit quietly and focus your attention on your breath, something remarkable happens. You begin to notice that your experience of breathing gets created by your attention rather than simply existing as an automatic bodily function. The sensation of air moving in and out of your lungs becomes more vivid when you focus on it and fades into background noise when your attention moves elsewhere. This demonstrates the active role your consciousness plays in creating every aspect of your experience. The breathing was happening before you paid attention to it, but the rich sensory experience of breathing only emerged when you directed awareness toward it. The same principle applies to every other aspect of your reality. Your brain constantly constructs experiences based on where you focus your attention, but most of this construction happens automatically without your conscious awareness. Regular meditation practice trains you to observe this construction process directly. You start to notice how thoughts appear in your awareness, exist for a few moments, then disappear completely. You can watch emotions arise, intensify, and dissolve without any apparent external cause. You begin to see how your brain creates the sense of being a separate self by generating a continuous stream of self-referential thoughts and maintaining the feeling that you're the one thinking them. Advanced meditation practitioners report states where the construction process becomes completely transparent. They describe moments where thoughts stop, the sense of being a separate self dissolves, and only pure awareness remains. These experiences reveal that your fundamental nature exists independently of all the mental constructions your brain normally creates. The awareness that observes thoughts is not itself a thought. The consciousness that witnesses emotions remains unchanged regardless of which emotions appear and disappear. Neuroplasticity research shows that meditation literally rewires your brain to support expanded perceptual capabilities. Brain scans of long-term meditators revealed decreased activity in regions associated with self-referential thinking and increased connectivity between areas involved in present-moment awareness. These changes correlate with reported reductions in anxiety, competitive behavior, and psychological suffering. The brain adapts to support whatever you practice consistently, and meditation practice develops neural pathways that support expanded awareness. Mindfulness techniques offer practical methods for expanding perception during everyday activities. Instead of rushing through daily routines on autopilot, you can use ordinary activities as opportunities to observe how your brain constructs experience. When you eat breakfast, you can pay attention to how your brain creates the experience of taste, texture, and satisfaction. When you walk to work, you can notice how your brain constructs the experience of movement through space and the feeling of your feet contacting the ground. These practices reveal that most of your daily experience happens automatically without conscious participation. Your brain creates elaborate experiences of taste, movement, and spatial awareness, but you typically remain unconscious of the construction process. Mindfulness training develops the ability to observe these normally unconscious processes in real time, giving you direct insight into how your perceptual systems operate. The challenge lies in how difficult it becomes to release illusions you've grown attached to throughout your lifetime. Your brain spent decades constructing elaborate stories about who you are, what you need to be happy, and how the world works. These constructions feel absolutely real because you have no other reference point for comparison. Letting go of familiar perceptual patterns can feel like losing your grip on reality itself, even though you're actually gaining access to expanded possibilities. People often resist practices that reveal the constructed nature of experience because the implications feel threatening to their sense of identity and security. If your thoughts and emotions are just temporary constructions rather than fundamental aspects of who you are, then what remains? If your problems and achievements exist only within constructed realities, then why do they feel so important? These questions create psychological resistance that can make it difficult to persist with practices that expand awareness. The key involves finding balance between transcending illusion and functioning effectively in daily life. You don't need to abandon practical responsibilities or social relationships to expand your awareness. You can recognize the constructed nature of your experience while still engaging fully with work, family, and personal goals. The recognition simply changes your relationship to these activities from desperate attachment to playful engagement. This shift creates practical benefits that extend into every aspect of daily living. Anxiety decreases when you recognize that most of your worries exist only in mental constructions about possible future scenarios. Competition becomes less intense when you understand that you're competing against other aspects of the same consciousness you are. Suffering reduces when you see that difficult emotions are temporary experiences arising within awareness rather than fundamental aspects of your identity. The practices work because they reveal what you already are rather than creating something new. Your fundamental nature as pure awareness doesn't need to be developed or achieved. It simply needs to be recognized beneath the layers of mental construction that normally obscure it. This recognition can happen gradually through consistent practice, or suddenly in moments of insight that shift your entire perspective. You can begin experiencing your true nature immediately through simple practices that require no special equipment or training. Spend 5 minutes focusing completely on your breath. Notice how the experience of breathing changes when you pay attention to it. Observe thoughts as they appear and disappear in your awareness. Watch emotions arise and dissolve without trying to change or judge them. But recognizing the constructed nature of reality opens up possibilities that extend far beyond personal transformation. If consciousness creates the interface of spacetime rather than being produced by it, then understanding consciousness might unlock capabilities that transcend the apparent limitations of physical law. The technology revolution coming from beyond spacetime. These discoveries point toward technological possibilities that could fundamentally transform human capabilities. Hoffman claims that understanding consciousness will unlock technologies that make our current scientific achievements look like stone tools. He predicts that once we crack the code operating beyond spacetime, we'll develop capabilities that transcend every limitation we currently accept as fundamental laws of physics. These aren't incremental improvements to existing technology. These are consciousness-based tools that could reshape how we interact with reality itself. Some teams explore consciousness-based models to derive spacetime mathematically, building on the theoretical framework that spacetime emerges from more fundamental conscious processes rather than consciousness emerging from spacetime. If space and time function as interface elements rather than fundamental reality, then technologies operating at deeper levels could potentially bypass these interface constraints. This research connects directly to Hoffman's mathematical models, showing how conscious agents might generate the structure of spacetime through their interactions. Current developments in quantum computing provide early glimpses of these possibilities. Quantum computers process information using principles that don't follow classical physics rules. They can perform calculations that would take traditional computers billions of years to complete. These systems work by manipulating quantum states that exist in mathematical spaces rather than physical locations. The technology demonstrates that computation doesn't require classical spacetime frameworks to achieve remarkable results. Consciousness research intersects with quantum computing in ways that support these theoretical developments. Some researchers explore whether consciousness itself operates using quantum mechanical principles that transcend classical spacetime limitations. If consciousness and quantum computing both work outside normal physical constraints, then combining these fields could unlock new technological capabilities. The mathematics governing both consciousness and quantum mechanics share similar features that suggest deeper connections. The humor in our current technological approach becomes obvious when you consider how we're building increasingly sophisticated devices while completely missing the fundamental operating system. We create faster processors, better batteries, and more efficient software while remaining ignorant about the basic code that generates our entire reality. It's like trying to improve video game graphics while being unaware that you're playing a video game. We optimize the interface elements without understanding the underlying programming that creates the interface. Our most advanced technologies still operate within the spacetime framework that Hoffman claims is just a user interface. We build rockets that move objects through space over time. We create communication systems that transmit information across distances. We develop manufacturing processes that arrange matter in space according to physical laws. All of these approaches accept spacetime as fundamental rather than recognizing it as a constructed overlay on deeper reality. The potential applications emerge naturally from understanding spacetime as interface rather than foundation. Technologies that can modify consciousness directly could enable capabilities that seem impossible within current physics frameworks. The distinction between possible and impossible might disappear because the limitations exist only within the interface, not in the consciousness creating the interface. The question of access to these capabilities creates serious ethical concerns. Who gets to control technologies that can manipulate the fundamental processes underlying experience? How do you prevent misuse of powers that could reshape existence according to someone's personal preferences? Hoffman acknowledges that the ability to manipulate reality could be a Pandora's box, with the potential for both miraculous advancements and unforeseen dangers. He states that outcomes could be miraculous or contain all sorts of nasty surprises. Current technological developments provide hints about these possibilities without most people recognizing the deeper implications. Brain-computer interfaces already demonstrate direct connections between consciousness and digital systems. Virtual reality creates convincing alternate realities that can fool your senses completely. Artificial intelligence generates responses that seem conscious without any actual awareness behind them. These technologies represent early steps toward the consciousness-based systems this research envisions. The progression toward advanced consciousness technologies accelerates as different research fields converge on similar conclusions about the nature of consciousness and physical reality. Neuroscience reveals how brains construct perceptual experiences. Physics shows how spacetime breaks down at fundamental scales. Computer science develops systems that can generate convincing realities from pure information. Philosophy explores how consciousness might be primary rather than emergent from matter. Hoffman suggests that this convergence has accelerated dramatically in recent months. Research teams worldwide are making breakthroughs that support his theoretical framework. The mathematical models describing consciousness as fundamental are becoming more precise and testable. Experimental protocols for investigating consciousness spacetime relationships are moving from theoretical speculation to actual laboratory investigations. The timeline for these developments might be shorter than anyone expects. Hoffman indicates that just in the last few months, it started to crack open. This suggests that humanity stands on the verge of technological breakthroughs that will completely transform our understanding of what's possible. The same technologies that could eliminate human suffering could also create forms of destruction and chaos that exceed our current imagination. The ability to process exponentially larger datasets through quantum computing could refine predictions about consciousness-reality relationships to near certainty. This computational power might unlock the mathematical precision needed to develop practical applications of consciousness-based technologies. The potential for quantum computing to work outside the limitations of spacetime aligns with theoretical models, suggesting we may be approaching major breakthroughs in reality manipulation. Science must first understand our perceptual filters to uncover reality, beginning with acceptance that our senses deceive us. Evolution engineered our senses to hide reality. Questioning perception reveals the path to true awareness, but this recognition forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth about the nature of everything we've ever experienced. The headset you were born wearing creates every detail of your daily experience. Everything you've ever experienced is a carefully constructed illusion designed by evolution to keep you alive long enough to reproduce. Your eyes don't show you reality. Your brain doesn't record truth. The solid world around you exists only as a user interface, hiding incomprehensible processes underneath. But recognizing this illusion becomes the first step toward transcending it. When you understand that you are the consciousness creating this entire experience, rather than just a character trapped within it, everything changes. You discover your true nature beyond the biological headset you were born wearing. Question every assumption about what's real and find out who you actually are.